and 3. Over to you, Shankar Narayanan sir. Sir, you're on mute, I think. Cannot hear you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to all the dignitaries from the CA Institute side as well as from the university side. Such a august presence. It's a privilege to be addressing in all your presence. One good thing about, as the earlier speakers said, that when you are able to get through to the faculties, you will be able to indirectly get to that much more students. It is not just that one faculty we get through the knowledge, and the knowledge disseminates. So this is the only thing that multiplies as it goes from one person to another. So GST as a taxation, still in its early days, though 4 years old, still in its early days. So we will have to pass that knowledge, and people will have to be made aware of as to what it is meant to be and what it is. So with that in perspective, I think we'll start our session. Just give me a moment. I'll share my screen so that we can see the presentation. Yeah. So when we look at any taxation law, the primary thing that we need to look at is what is it that it is taxable under this particular law. So what do I do which will make me liable to pay that tax, which is what is called as a taxable event. So the primary identification is taxable event, and what is it that I deal with that will make me liable to pay that tax. For example, in case of income tax, when I earn income, I become liable to pay income tax. So there is a defined taxable event, and then there is a taxability on what? It is taxable on the income that we earn. A similar structure is available in GST as well, wherein in GST, the taxable event is the supply. The concept of supply is the taxable event. So what all can come under supply? Everything, a transaction that is happening in India, whether it is originating from India or whether it is ending in India, the transactions happening in India will all come under the concept of supply. But there again, we need to apply filters. So everything will be coming under GST or coming under the concept of supply? Not necessarily. It has to be a transaction involving a transaction of goods or a transaction in service, a supply of goods or a supply of service. Okay, will all the transactions of supply of goods and services become taxable under GST? No, only when it is fitting within the definition of the supply as per section 7 of the CGST Act. So when we look at the taxability under GST, anything that is happening within India, if it is concerning goods or services, and then when it is a supply of goods or services, then only we talk about the coverage of GST. That is when the charging section, the levy of GST will come into picture. So this structure of how to determine what is taxable requires two things. One, what are all the things that can become taxable, and when we do a certain taxable event, that is when it will become taxable. The taxable event is supply under GST, and what all are taxable under GST? As the name suggests, goods and services are taxable. What is this definition of goods and what is the definition of service? Section 2 subsection 52 of the CGST Act says this, that goods means every kind of movable property. So there is a categorical inclusion that anything that is movable is considered to be goods, and other than money and securities. So what cannot form part of goods is money and securities, for the sheer reason transaction in money, that is giving of money and getting of money, is not goods. Securities, any kind of shares, debentures, the ones which are concerned with the Securities Contract Regulation Act will never come under the definition of goods. So they do not come under the purview of GST, not because they are not attracted to tax, they are not even defined as goods under GST. So when something is not even goods, how can it become taxable under GST? So money and securities is not goods, but actionable claims are considered to be goods. So actionable claims we all know that where we have a legal right to enforce a recovery, that is what is an actionable claim. That actionable claims are considered to be goods and growing crops, grass and things attached to earth. So why would these get included in the definition of goods? This is out of the previous experience of the tax department. In the sales tax regime, there used to be a famous activity. I wouldn't say a famous activity. It would be it should be termed as a tax evasion mechanism, where I will have huge timbers. The timbers have grown, that is, the trees are grown in my land. It is an agriculture land. I want to cut it down and sell it as timber. But if I cut it down and sell it as timber, I'll have to pay sales tax. Instead, what I'll do is, whatever is standing as tree in my land, I will sell my land to the opposite party. When I sell the land, all I need to do is, since it is an agricultural land, I need to pay only the registration fee. There is no stamp duty. It will be a municipal amount of, maybe I'm talking about 20-25 years back, hardly 1% or 0.75%. And then this gentleman who has procured the land, now that it is his land, he will cut down the trees, he will take the timber, and after he has completed that activity, he will transfer the land back to me by paying only, again, a 0.75% or 1% registration charges. What this will ensure is that there is no sales tax that is paid on the transaction, because whatever is involved in the transaction between the two of them is an immovable property related transaction. There is no sale. Immovable property related transaction does not come under sales tax. So this is how things were happening. So to overcome that, or to circumvent such kind of activities in GST, they have clearly laid out that any kind of growing crops or grass or things which are attached to or forming part of earth, but which are agreed to be cut down, which are agreed to be severed before the supply or under a contract of supply. This whole definition from the perspective of Kerala is even more important, because when I say actionable claim, the primary thing that hits our mind is lottery. In India, only Sikkim and Kerala, lottery is legal. In all other places, it is illegal. Actionable claims taxability will make much more sense in the state of Kerala, because lottery is one common actionable claim. And when it comes to growing crops or grass or things attached to or forming part of earth, there is a huge element of discussion, especially the transactions happening in Kerala. For example, if I am selling a tea estate, a piece of land along with the crops that are standing on it, will it be considered as goods? Certainly not, because there is no agreement to cut it down. They will only take the yield from the plant. They are not going to cut down the plant. When I buy a rubber estate, the idea is to extract rubber, take the yield from the rubber trees, and not to cut down the rubber trees. Hence, in those cases, it will not come within the definition of goods. Whereas, when we clearly define that the transaction happens in immovable property, but that is only to cut down what is forming part of that land and which is attached to earth, but it is to be cut down, then that will become goods, and that will become consequently covered under GST. So this is the definition where they tried covering maximum extent of what is goods. Now that one part of the GST law is clear, this is what is goods, and you do a supply of this, you will be taxable. The second part of the GST law is service. So when you deal in that also, you are liable to pay GST. So what is a service? Service means anything other than goods. So the definition is straightforward, and in a way it is very simple, because the definition doesn't try elaborating things. It simply says that anything other than goods is considered to be service. So if something cannot be considered as goods, you'll have to treat it as service. And money and securities will also be not treated as services. We already saw that securities will never be treated as goods, and securities is getting excluded from services definition also. In effect, securities, there won't be any GST at all. All that securities will be subjected to is the STT, Securities Transaction Tax. They are at the present moment, GST cannot be levied on securities unless there is an amendment in the GST law. That being said, money, transaction in money, will it tantamount to supply of goods? No. Will it tantamount to supply of service? That is also a no. Now, if money transactions are not going to be neither goods or services, we are free to transact in money. There is a restriction. Any transaction in money where it involves the conversion of money, either from its current form into another form, one mode to another, one currency to another, one denomination to another, in any such conversion that is happening, where a separate consideration is charged, that's it. Then that separate consideration is considered as service. So when I give you 100 rupees and take 10 rupees as a matter of changing it, there is no separate consideration. I gave you 100 rupee, I got 10 rupee notes. There is no service. But if I give you $1 and get 75 rupees, there is an element of service inside it because there is a separate consideration. He is not going to give me for $1 75 rupees without earning any profit or without earning any money on that. Certainly he will be having an inbuilt element of service. Hence, any kind of transaction in money where there is a conversion element or change from denomination also, anything, one form to another, paying money and getting a demand draft is conversion from one form to another, liable to GST as supply of service. But here what we need to note is that if I give 1000 rupees and take a demand draft, they will give me a service charge of 30 rupees. They will charge a service charge of 30 rupees. So it is not 1030 which is taxable to GST. It is only the 30 rupees that is taxable to GST. The separate consideration is only covered under GST, not the money transaction. Investing money or converting money, money value is not going to be taxed. The separate consideration is only going to be taxed under GST as service. With this in perspective, when we look at what is supply, the definition under section 7 of the CGST Act lays down in front of us what is supply. Section 7(1)(a), B, C are the sublimbs where we discuss about what are all the transactions or what are all the other elements that are involved in supply. A general definition of supply is given in 7(1)(a). A specific definition in terms of import of services, there is a definition, and then certain transactions are considered to be mandatorily supplies, which means they are called as deemed supply. And then certain transactions, come what may, will not be treated as a supply at all, which are the ones which are covered under Schedule 3. So what we will now see is the first element of supply, the general definition of a supply. Now, what is a supply? All forms of supply of goods or services. What could be a constituent to it? It could be a sale, barter, exchange, leasing, licensing, renting, disposal, any such transaction. All this or any of this, when it is involving supply of goods or services, any sale, barter, exchange, leasing, licensing, disposal or transfer, which is made or agreed to be made. So it is not necessary that only after the transaction GST has to get attracted. Supply covers even an agreement to make a supply, which is made, whether the supply is made or I have agreed to make a supply, in either of the cases, and it should be for a consideration. Now, what is a consideration? We all know right from our days of Contract Act, something in return, what we earn in the transaction. Section 2 subsection 31 defines consideration. It can be in the form of money, it can be in any other form as well, but something in return for the transaction. That is what is a consideration. So I should have agreed to do something which is in the nature of sale, exchange, transfer, barter, and for that there must be a consideration, and it should also be in the course or furtherance of my business. This is much more important. It is not just that there is a consideration and then there is a sale. It should also be in the course or furtherance of my business, and it should be by a person. Now, who is a person? A person is the one who is defined under the CGST Act 2 subsection 84, which is similar to the Income Tax Act definition. Individual, HUF, partnership, AOP, BOI, company, local authority, all will be covered as a person. So after going through this definition, that is any kind of sale, exchange, barter, leasing, licensing, which is made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business, is treated as a supply. Let me take a simple example. You can try to, I think we can interact over the chat. That is what is my assumption. If we can interact over the chat, you can give me your answers in the chat box. I am a chartered accountant. In practice, I am registered with GST. I am selling my old AC, the old air conditioner in my office, to a person. Let's say as a scrap or as a second-hand air conditioner. I am registered with GST. Am I doing a supply in this transaction? I am disposing of the AC. Am I doing a supply? What is your answer? Yes or no? A simple yes or no will do. Okay. So there are many yeses and nos. Now, you may reserve your answer. What I'll do is I'll post one more question, then rethink and tell me an answer. Now, the next question is, situation being the same. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm registered with GST. I take the old jewelry of my wife. We go and give it an exchange for new jewelry, the latest design jewelry, and we get that jewelry home. Now, is there a supply that has happened here? Me giving the old jewelry to the jeweler in exchange. Is there a supply? Now you will be able to appreciate the difference between the first transaction and the second transaction. The first transaction, I was giving the air conditioner, which I was using it for my business purpose. Now, when I give that air conditioner, when I sell that air conditioner, it is certainly a supply because there is a consideration, there is a sale, and it is in the course or furtherance of business. 100% it is in the course or furtherance of my business, because when my business asset on which I am claiming depreciation under Income Tax Act, if I am going to give it away, certainly there is an element of GST, it is taxable as a supply. Whereas the jewelry that are owned by my spouse, if I am going to give it to a jeweler for exchange, is it in the course or furtherance of my business? Certainly not. When he is selling it to me, his sales is covered under supply. But my supply to him, is it a supply under GST? Certainly not, which has been clarified on 13th of July 2017 itself by the department, saying that this person who's giving the gold but not in the course or furtherance of his business, there is no element of GST at all on the transaction. Whereas when I am getting it exchanged and the sale, that is the new jewelry, is billed on me by my jeweler, that jewelry person is charging me GST again, because that is his supply. For his outward supply, he has to charge me GST. So, but then what happens to the gold that you have given in exchange? That will be treated as a reduction from the payment to be made. That is not a supply. So the main point that we need to grasp here is, though there is an element of sale, though there is a consideration, though it is made or agreed to be made, there must be an element of in the course or furtherance of business. If that is not there, the transaction will not stand the test of supply. So this is the generic definition of supply under section 7(1)(a). All the elements that you see on your screen must be forming part of the transaction to make it as a supply. Now let's move to the next part, import of service. Now that there is a general definition, why should there be a subsequent limb? That is again specifically because certain transactions require certain special treatment. And we all know, as per the interpretation of statutes, when we have a generic coverage as well as a specific coverage, the specific shall always prevail over the generic. So section 7(1)(a) talks about general supply, but transactions which are specifically spoken about in 7.1b or 7.1c will be attracted under the specific provisions only. They will not go to the generic provision because specific will always prevail over generic. When it is coming to import of services, we are supposed to come to 7.1b only. Now quickly, what is an import of service? Three things are required for an import of service. One, the person who is supplying should be outside India. The person who is receiving should be in India. These two are very rudimentary. Because whenever we say import, the one who receives it should be in India. The one who sends it should be outside India. Yes. But the most important thing in GST is the place of supply should fall in India. Supplier should be outside India. Recipient should be in India. The place of supply should fall in India. Then only the transaction will be called as import of service. This is the basic requirement under 2 subsection 11 of the IGST Act. So now that we know what is an import of service, how import of service will come into the scheme of supply. Whenever there is an import of service and it is for a consideration, and whether it is in the course of furtherance of business or not. Whenever there is a import of service by a person for a consideration, whether or not it is in the course of furtherance of business, it is treated to be a supply and it is covered under GST. We can very clearly see the intention of the department here in terms of taxing e-commerce transactions. I'll give an example. The Amazon Prime, Netflix. Now these are online database access or retrieval services provider. They do not even have their servers in India. Their servers are all outside India. So imagine the situation. The supplier is outside India. The recipient is in India. The person who is in India is the recipient. He is the one who is paying the consideration. Now the recipient is paying the consideration to take their services, but is it in the course or furtherance of his business? Certainly not. It is not in the course or furtherance of his business. It is only for our pleasure to spend our time, have some entertainment. We are subscribing to this and we are watching the movies and contents from that. But whether or not it is in the course or furtherance of business, it is treated to be taxable. That is the reason why a specific definition has been inserted for import of services, because for the person who is supplying it, it could be in the course or furtherance of business. But for the person who is receiving it in India, it is not in the course or furtherance of his business. Still, they wanted it to be brought under the definition of supply. Consequently, it can become taxable. Hence, this specific clause of 7.1b. Moving further, third element, 7.1c, transactions which are considered to be a supply. In other words, even if there is no consideration, there is nothing that is transpiring between the supplier and the recipient, nothing moving from supplier to recipient, but it is still deemed to be a supply. What is that? That is what is defined in Schedule 1 of the CGST Act. There is a list of 4 different transactions. All these transactions, even if there is no single rupee of consideration, will be deemed to be a supply and we will become liable to pay GST on these transactions. Now let's look at what are all those deemed supply transactions. Permanent transfer or disposal of a business asset. Now, any business asset? No. Of a business asset on which I have availed ITC. So if I have availed input tax credit on an asset and I give it away free, permanent transfer or disposal without consideration, because we are seeing what is deemed supply. Where there is no consideration, only deemed supply situation will arise. Where there is no consideration, but it is in the nature mentioned here, then it will be deemed to be a supply and we will become liable to pay GST. Now, I will post a simple question which is very relevant in this time. A company is procuring oxygen concentrators and gives it to people who need. It is buying oxygen concentrators to their own employees, they are giving it. Whoever is in need of it, they are giving it. While buying the oxygen concentrator, let's say it is 50,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees plus GST, 9,000 rupees they pay. And this 50,000 rupees worth of item is given free to the employee. Question. This transaction, is it a deemed supply? Yes, no. Again, a monosyllable answer will do. the transaction of the company giving it free to the employees, will it be a supply? Yes or no? Here, the key question that we may have to ask is, have they taken input tax credit? If they had taken input tax credit, then the transaction of giving it free to the employee will become taxable. But if they have not taken input tax credit, the activity of giving it free will not tantamount to a supply under this provision, because any business asset on which you have availed ITC, which is given free, that is only going to attract GST. Anything given free is not going to be deemed a supply. I am allowed to give donations. I am allowed to give goods as donations, no issues. But if I had taken ITC and then I give it as free, there I have a problem. GST will come in and say it is a deemed supply, pay GST. That is para 1 of schedule 1. Look at an example. On the day of retirement of one Mr. Paranjyothi from NVP Limited as a CEO, the company decides to gift him the car and the laptop used by him while performing his official duties. Discuss the taxability of the above. So what do you think? Car, laptop, both are taxable under GST. In this case, where it is given free to the employee on the day of his retirement. What is your view? Yes, no? The company on the day of retirement of its CEO just gives him the car and the laptop which he has been using for performing services as free. What is the taxability on this transaction? Yes, it is completely taxable, provided they have availed ITC. If they have not availed ITC, there is a different interpretation, because it will not get covered under para 1. As of now, we have seen para 1. So as per para 1, if you have availed ITC only, then it becomes a deemed supply. If you have not availed ITC, it will not become a deemed supply. So let's, with that understanding, proceed into the next step, which is para 2 of schedule 1. The goods or services when it is supplied between related persons or distinct persons. So this is a two separate definition in GST. Who is a related person and who is a distinct person? Related person is defined under section 15. There is an explanation specifically inserted which says who is a related person, and it generally covers all those people who are, let's say, where we have a ownership 25% or more. When I have 25% of more interest in the other's business, either directly or indirectly, both of us will become related parties. So that is one way of establishing a relationship. Or we are coming under the same holding company and we are fellow subsidiaries, that will result in related party transaction. And then we, as a joint venture, we are holding another organization, that will also result in a related party transaction. So we know what is a related party transaction, where you and me are different. We don't have the same PAN. Permanent account number of you and me are different, but there is a holding interest, which is at the minimum 25% in each other. It could be shares, it could be controlling interest. Now, on the other hand, who is a distinct person? Now, this distinct person is a concept which is unique only for GST. How? Distinct person means he will also have the same PAN. I am registered in Tamil Nadu. I am also having a branch in Ernakulam. I am registered in Kerala. My PAN will be the same, but I will have two GST registration numbers. Tamil Nadu will start with 33, Kerala will start with 32 as the first two digits of my GST number. What it conveys is we are the part of the same organization, but we are two separate persons in the eyes of GST law. So GST law looks at us as two different people. That is the type of person who is called as a distinct person. Now, related person is the one where there is a separate entity. You and me are separate entity, but there is a controlling interest. There is a 25% or more interest. But distinct person is the one. You and me are one only. As an organization, we are one. But as GST registration, we are different. So any transaction between these two people, a distinct and a distinct person, or a related person and a related person, that is considered to be a supply of goods or service, as the case may be, even though there is no consideration. Okay. Now, let us take a simple example where the department had fully put forth the provisions of this second para of Schedule 1. Banks, all the major banks in India also have the investment or share broking activities, securities as they call. So for example, if we see ICICI Bank, there will be ICICI Securities. If there is an SBI Bank, then there will be a SBI Securities. The use of logo of ICICI, which is owned by the ICICI Bank, by ICICI Securities. Use of logo, which is owned by ICICI Bank, used by ICICI Securities, because same logo they want to brand. Do you think it is a supply? No money is paid. The ICICI Securities does not pay any money to ICICI Bank, but they are using the same logo. Then do you think there is an element of supply? Do you think it will get covered under para 2? What is your view? Again, yes or no in the chat box. The chat box is the only opportunity that we have for interaction because we are connected only through the online method. So it is better that you resort to the chat box to give me some answers. Great. Perfect. As many of you have given personally as well as to all panelists, the answer is a resounding yes, because there is a supply of service. The ownership of that intangible asset, the intangible asset being that brand name, is with the ICICI Bank. Now, when it is used by its related party, 100% subsidiary, no denying that, but you are a related party and you do not pay me any consideration. You will use my brand, no issues. You can use the brand without consideration, but it is treated as a supply under GST. You will have to pay GST to the department. You don't pay money between you two, but you are liable to pay GST, is what it conveys. So that is what they are trying to track here. And this is why transaction between distinct person is also taxable under GST, which means I'm doing a stock transfer. I am in Chennai, I'm making a stock transfer to my branch in Ernakulam. It is within the same organization, but between one to another. One distinct person to another distinct person, taxable under GST. Because of this second para. Now, one of the interesting things in this is that the related person definition covers employer-employee relationship also. So an employer and employee are considered to be related party. Where it will have an importance is, they have said, if there is going to be any transaction of gift between employer to the employee, then if it is going to be up to rupees 50,000 per year per employee, then there is no need to deem it to be a supply and pay GST. But if it is going to exceed 50,000 rupees, the free gift given to the employee is going to exceed 50,000 rupees. Will it attract GST? Yes, it will become a deemed supply and you are liable to pay GST. So this is the extent of para 2, which says any transaction between related party or distinct person, even if it is without consideration, is deemed to be a supply under GST. Now look at this practical situation. AK Limited is manufacturing organization in the outskirts of Chennai. It is providing food and transportation free of cost to its employees. This food and transportation, is it taxable under GST? They are providing it free. Will it be taxable? Is the first part of the question. No, they are not giving it free. They are collecting a certain portion of the cost, not full of the cost, certain portion of the cost from the employees. In that case, will it be taxable? So you can first answer the first part of the question. Is this taxable under GST? Is this transaction taxable under GST? What is your view? Yes or no? I am giving food and transportation free of cost to my employees. Is it taxable? This is where I think interpretation plays a huge role. Schedule 3, which we will see a little later, says that any services by an employee to the employer is not a supply. But it doesn't say any services by the employer to the employee is not a supply, which means employer is rendering services to employee, it is fully taxable. Employer is rendering services to employee, it is fully taxable. That is what has happened here. Employer has given food. Employer has given transportation to the employee. Is it taxable? Yes. Sir, but 50,000 limit, 50,000 is only for gift. Giving a ride to office every day, giving food every day to the employee cannot be termed as gift. Just because there is a 50,000 rupees limit, we cannot try to take it to the gift category. It can never become gift. So anytime the food or transportation given free by an employer to the employee is susceptible to GST because it is a supply by the employer to the employee. Sir, they are collecting some money. In that case, whether you are collecting or not, it is irrespective of your collection taxable. Entire consideration, there is no consideration, then it becomes a deemed supply. There is some consideration, still it is a deemed supply transaction. Whatever consideration that you have taken will not be taken seriously because you are related party. Employer and employee are related party. So department will view it differently for the purpose of valuation. But is it taxable? Yes, it is taxable because the service is not rendered by employee to employer. It is rendered by employer to employee. Now let's get into the third para of Schedule 1, which is any supply of goods between a principal and agent or an agent and a principal, either which way it happens. So in this transaction, it has to be made a deemed supply because the typical consignment books of accounts that we study in accounting, read with the Del Credar Commission and all, where what happens is whenever I send the goods to my agent, it is not a sale. Technically, it is not a sale because he is only holding it on behalf of me. And whenever he sells to the ultimate customer, that is when the sale happens. But GST says, I cannot wait until you make a sale to the end customer. Let's keep it like this. Whenever the goods are sent from the principal to the agent, that time itself it is deemed to be a supply. You pay GST. And when the agent gives it to the ultimate consumer, let the agent take ITC, input tax credit of the invoice from the principal, and let him pay the remaining amount of GST when he is making ultimate sale to the end customer. That is why they have put in this para 3. Any kind of supply through an agent where it is sent by principal to agent or agent sending it back to principal, it is deemed to be a supply, even though they will not pay a single rupee between themselves. Principal sends the goods, agent will store it and then sell. So where is the sales happening here unless agent sells it to a third party? But GST says even if there is no consideration, the activity of movement from the principal to the agent is termed as supply and you are liable to pay GST on that. And finally, the fourth para in Schedule 1, import of services by a taxable person from a related person. So I am a person in India and I am importing some services from a related person outside India. That related person is outside India and it is in the course or furtherance of my business. The purpose for which I am receiving the services, it is in the course or furtherance of my business. Let me give an example here. Again, we will resort to the chat box to confirm our understanding. Let us assume that my brother is in London and he is an eminent lawyer there. So I have a situation where a family dispute is there where I call him and I seek his legal advice. My brother is giving me his legal advice as to this is how it should be done, that is how it should be done. He is a related party because even relatives are considered to be related. He is my related party. He is giving me the advice to how to go about. Now, I am in receipt of the services of my brother who is an advocate. I am in India, he is outside India. I am the recipient who is in India. So the place of supply will also fall in India. Supplier is in India, recipient outside, sorry, supplier outside India, recipient is in India, place of supply falls in India. It is a clear case of import of service. My question, is it covered under para 4? What we have just seen, which is on your screen. Is it covered under para 4? Yes, no. That is what I require. What is your view? Yes, it is covered, or no, it is not covered. What do you say? Answer is no, it is not covered. Why? Because it is not in the course or furtherance of my business. Me, the person who is sitting in India and receiving that advice from my brother, I'm not using it in the course or furtherance of my business. It is for my personal purpose. Suppose if I have asked him that question where he is giving me a reply, and that is something which I am going to put into use for my client in India, then it becomes in the course or furtherance of my business. Then it becomes taxable. So this is the fourth element they want to bring about in para 4. So the taxability will come only when it is in the course or furtherance of business. So they are allowing for such interaction from India to a person outside India, not a problem, as long as it is not in the course or furtherance of business. So even if there is no consideration in these 4 situations, it will tantamount to a supply. Moment it becomes a supply, the taxable event has happened. So GST liability will arise. So what should have been involved here? Goods, services, as we have seen in different situations. So we have seen the first part of supply, the general definition of supply, import of services, and then we saw what are all considered to be deemed supply. Now we will look at the next element, certain transactions which are treated as supply of goods and certain transactions which are treated as supply of service. Now why this categorization is required? This is because of the hangover from the earlier law. What is that hangover? I'll explain that for the benefit of people who might be learning directly GST. Gannon Dunkerley is the famous case law, 1948, the Presidency of Madras judgment, where the question was that company was given the order to construct a building. They were constructing a building. Sales tax authorities issued a notice to them saying, you are making a sale, pay sales tax. Now they said, why should I pay sales tax? Because I am only doing an immovable property, and after it becomes an immovable property only, I hand it over to the owner. So when I am doing an immovable property, I don't sell the cement, steel or the brick separately. I am making it into a building and selling, making it to a building and handing it over. So where is the question of sale? And department said nothing doing. You are actually selling the brick in a different way, the concrete in a different way. But that is something which was not thought about at that point of time. So the Presidency of Madras, the erstwhile High Court, ruled in favor of the taxpayer and said there is no sale. So department would not relent. They painstakingly followed it up, and in 1983, constitutional amendment was brought. The 46th Amendment of the Constitution brought in something called as Article 366, Clause 29A, which we famously called as deemed transactions, where in 366 Clause 29A Clause D, they brought in and said any kind of works contract is treated as supply of goods. Works contract is simply where there is an element of goods and element of service as well. It is treated as a sale. But in 1994, something else happened in India, which is introduction of service tax. 1997, works contract was brought under service tax. So now we had a dual situation. Works contract, sales tax said I am also liable. I am also the one who is entitled to collect tax. Service tax said I am also the one who is entitled to collect tax because there is an element of service. How much is goods? How much is service? This fight went on for some time. In 2004, they came to a conclusion. Let us decide that if it is a new construction, 60% is considered as material, 40% is considered as service. If it is an existing construction where there is going to be a repair renovation, then 40% is considered to be goods and 60% is considered to be service. Some rule they arrived. So this is why before GST we would have all seen, if you go to a AC restaurant and eat, in your food bill, you would have seen VAT plus service tax. Because it is an AC restaurant, service tax is there. Because you are eating food, has an element of goods also inside it, it is considered to be a sales also. So all these issues we had, especially with respect to software. So food we have seen, works contract we have seen, software. Software, there was a huge fight, whether it is goods or service. It's a tougher question to answer. Whether it is a goods or service, how do I say? If I am giving it in a CD, it is considered to be goods, not necessary. Nowadays we are downloading. No more use of CDs. No more requirement of pen drives. Then somehow we had to have a tiebreaker. Schedule 2 is the tiebreaker. Schedule 2 took up all those erstwhile situations where there was enough room for confusion. What is goods, what is service? There was confusion. So Schedule 2, they decided to put on the provision saying, let's break it into, these are all considered to be goods and these are all considered to be service. So the tiebreaker was taken up in Schedule 2, which is what we are going to see now. Any transfer of goods where there is a transfer of title, that is considered to be a supply of goods. The transfer of title, it may happen today or it may happen at a future date. Doesn't matter. It is considered to be a supply of goods. For example, a hire purchase transaction. I buy a car, 60 monthly installments, EMI, equated monthly installments I have to pay. But I buy the car today. The car will become mine only after I have paid successfully all the 60 installments. So the ownership is transferred. The title will be transferred, but title will not be transferred today. Title will be transferred at the end of the last installment. That is what is the essence of hire purchase transaction. That is considered to be a supply of goods because title transfer is there. But title transfer, whether it is currently there or it is in the future date, doesn't matter. It is considered to be a supply of goods. And what is a supply of service? A supply of service is where there is a right on a particular thing, a particular goods that are being transferred without transfer of title. Right is only transferred, right to use is transferred, but there is no transfer of title. Then it is considered to be a service. A typical example would be a sewage treatment plant. Sewage treatment plant in an industrial estate. Two companies have come together and created that, two factories. Both the factories will be using it. Both of them have invested money together, but it is only a right that they have. It is not ownership, meaning they have the right to use. They are not the owners. In that case, it is treated to be a supply of service. And then when it comes to land or building, what happens is there is no element of goods there. That means when I sell land or when I sell a building, land is immovable, building is immovable. So from a goods perspective, these are all immovable. They will never come under the category of goods. Whereas they can come under the taxability of service. When I take lease or tenancy or easement, in these cases, it will be termed as a supply of service. Lease, obviously a service. Rental, obviously a service. Easement, I have my land behind your land. I take the 10 feet by 40 feet space from you so that I can use it as the access to my land that you give me, but you are not transferring the land in my name. You are allowing me to pass. Easement. That easement right that you are giving to me is considered to be a service. And any kind of letting out, whether it is commercial or residential, wholly or partly, letting out or leasing is considered to be a supply of service. There is no element of goods there. And further, any treatment or process done on the goods that belong to another person is considered to be a supply of service. Any treatment or process done to goods which belong to another person is considered to be a supply of service. Now I got two interesting situations here. Time for us to chat also. Now tell me, in a situation where I am buying a bus, the empty shell bus is costing 15 lakh rupees. Now that is not playable, so I am going to do bodybuilding for the bus. Bus is mine. I am giving it to a person for doing bodybuilding. Bus cost is 15 lakhs. They do bodybuilding for 30 lakhs. I give them 30 lakhs. They put in material. they put in their they put in their services and they create the bus body for me and fit it in the bus. Now please tell me, the person who has done the bus bodybuilding service to me, is it a service or bus bodybuilding is supply of goods? What has he given to me? Is it goods or is it service? Even this answer is monosyllable. You can tell me whether it is a goods or whether it is a supply of service. 30 lakh rupees I gave him. He has bought the materials, fitted the materials, and done the activity of bringing all this together and making it into a complete bus. Is it supply of goods that he has given to me, or is it supply of service that he has given to me? Absolutely right. It is supply of service because the bus belongs to me. When the bus belongs to me, what he is doing is only he is doing a treatment or process. Of course, he is using material, but that material are all used on my bus. So when it is used in my goods, it is considered to be a supply of service. Fine. This is straightforward. Now let me bring, it is a job work. 100% is a job work since he has supplied a service to me. Let me bring in a very tricky situation which has been the major point in the initial days of GST, which was clarified by the department by a circular. I am an author. I have an intellectual property right. That is a book. I have got the content and everything set. Now I give it to a person, the content, to a printer. The printer gets it printed. The printer is in Sivagasi, so he gets it printed into books. And he delivers the books to me. Now please tell me, the printer has supplied to me goods or services? He is buying the paper, he is buying the ink, he is doing the setting, he is doing the printing, and he is doing the binding, he is coming and delivering it to me. Has he supplied goods or has he supplied services? So there is an equal element of goods as well as service answers that are coming to me. That is because it is one of the major issues. But department clarified saying that that printer is only doing services. Now, how do you say it is services? Because they considered my intellectual property. I am giving him an intellectual property. That intellectual property is my goods. That intellectual, intangible it is, but it is goods. Just because it doesn't have a physical existence, it cannot be considered to be service. Intangible is goods. That goods is the one on which he is doing the process. Because without my intellectual input, he could not have come out with a book. So there, that printing activity, though he is doing it, buying the material, everything, the ink, the paper, the wrappers, everything is procuring. All that is involving goods, but he is working on only my goods, which is intellectual property. Hence, it is considered to be a supply of service. A very, very interesting circular 11 of 2017, which was given way back in August 2017, because department had to resolve this problem. So they resolved this problem by saying when intellectual property belongs to somebody and the printing alone is done by the other person, it is considered to be a supply of service because it is a job work. Because it is a work done on the goods belonging to another person. Okay, let's move to the next part. Transfer of business assets. When I transfer the business assets which I own, it is 100% considered to be a supply of goods. Why? Because the mere activity of what I do is supply of goods. It is very much taxable under the provisions of GST as supply of goods. Now, how will I, or when are the situations I will stop using my business asset? One, I will sell it, which is an outright sale. Second one is, I am registered so far under GST. Suddenly, I deregister myself. Department says, fine, you deregister yourself, but whatever you have as stock, when you deregister, will become your personal property. So converting your business property into personal property is also considered to be a supply, and it is a supply of goods. When you cease to be a taxable person, what you do? No more business asset, it becomes my personal asset. Let's say I am running a TV showroom. 25 televisions I have sold. 5 televisions are pending with me. With that 5 televisions, I am surrendering my registration saying no more television business, I am getting out. Now, what happens with these 5 televisions? These 5 televisions are now becoming your personal asset, which you are actually business asset, then it is treated to be a supply of goods. And when business assets are used for personal or non-business purposes, it is considered to be a supply of service. Assets of the organization used for the purpose of personal purposes or non-business purposes, considered to be a supply of service under the eyes of GST. And when it comes to transfer of business assets, it is treated as supply of goods, I told you earlier. But there is a huge exemption here, or an exception I should say, which is when a business is transferred, there is a clear demarcation and a difference between transfer of business vis-a-vis transfer of assets. So what is transfer of business and what is transfer of assets? Transfer of business would mean transfer of both assets as well as liabilities. Transfer of assets would mean only transfer of assets which are held in the organization. So what is the problem? If you transfer the whole business as a going concern, there is no supply, there is no need to pay GST. Amalgamation, merger, demerger, succession of a business, all this will go under this, there is no need to pay GST. Whereas transfer of business assets alone will be a taxable event under GST, liable to GST. And then renting of immovable property will very much come under the supply of services. Construction where there is an element of intention to sell. Construction where I am intending to sell that civil structure or the building to a buyer, it is considered to be a supply of service, except where the entire consideration is received after the completion of the project or after first occupation. So if the construction is completed, after that the property is sold, there is no element of GST in the transaction, because once the construction is completed, it becomes an immovable property. Sale of immovable property will never get covered under GST. There is no element of GST. So any amount received before completion, certainly that will become taxable under GST. Now let us practically understand this. Let us say I am constructing an apartment. There are 100 apartments that is coming in that huge apartment complex. I have done the Bhumi Puja and I have slowly started receiving advances. Now on the date of completion, I have got 60 apartments booked. I have got 60 apartments booked. 40 completed but yet to be booked, because this is the date of completion. Now please tell me, my GST liability will be on the 60 apartments or till the date of completion, whatever I received for the 60 apartments. I will repeat, my GST liability will be on the whole value of the 60 apartments, or for this whole 60 apartments, what is the value that I have received so far up to completion? On what amount you think I'll be liable to pay GST? On the whole value or the value received up to completion? What would be your view? I am liable to pay GST on the 60 apartments, whole value. Every apartment could be 20 lakhs. I have received only 10 lakhs from them. Doesn't matter. Even if you receive the remaining 10 lakhs for those 60 apartments after completion, still these 60 apartments are considered to be booked before. Some part of the consideration is received before completion. Then the whole of the 20 lakhs for one apartment and 60 apartments into 20 lakhs is taxable under GST. Sir, but for the 60 lakhs, 60 apartments, I am receiving some amount after completion. You did not receive the entire consideration after completion. You received some part earlier, which means whole value of that apartment is taxable under GST. On the other hand, for the 40 apartments, there is no GST, because nothing has been received before completion. Entire consideration is going to be received only after completion. So that is when GST will not apply for this 40. That is why GST will apply for this 60. Okay, let's move further. We look at a concept called as composite supply of services. We will see that in detail a little later. Composite supply of works contract. Why works contract? We discussed earlier itself, Article 366, Clause 29, where I took you to history, 1948 onwards. So works contract where there is an element of supply of goods and element of supply of service. Before GST, it was both service tax as well as VAT. Both were fighting for tax on that. Now in GST, it is very clear. Yes, we agree that there is an element of goods. We agree that there is an element of service. Let us call it as composite supply of service. So works contract under GST is a composite supply of service. Determined, no ambiguity. It is a service. Though there is an element of goods, it is a service. Same way, supply of food or drink other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption. There is an element of goods, there is an element of service. That is also treated to be a supply of service, a composite supply of service. Yes, there is goods, no denying. But what is predominant is service. So supply of food or drink other than alcoholic liquor is also treated as a supply of service in the eyes of GST. Now moving to the next part, that is the Schedule 3, last element in the supply definition. Transactions which will never be treated as supply. Transactions which will never be treated as supply, meaning these transactions will never attract GST. Now, what are these transactions? Services by an employee to the employer under the contract of employment. This is what I told you when we discussed para 2 of Schedule 1. Services by employee to employer is what is covered under Schedule 3, which takes it away from the purview of GST. Whereas services by employer to employee is not covered under Schedule 3. So there is a susceptibility of GST. Services by an employee to the employer under the contract of employment stays away from the purview of GST. Next, services by a court or a tribunal. When they render their services, the court or a tribunal are the typical appellate forums. There, the services rendered by them, for which they collect a fee, a court fee, that is considered to be neither supply of goods nor supply of service, not under the purview of GST. And then, services by a member of parliament, member of legislative assembly, or a person in his constitutional capacity, governor or a president of a state, president of a country. Likewise, we have many constitutional capacities. If you are rendering services in those capacities, as a member of parliament, member of legislative assembly, or a member of panchayat or a local authority, or in your constitutional capacity, whatever services you render, there is no element of GST because those transactions are considered to be neither supply of goods nor supply of service. So it is non-supply. There is no supply for this transaction. So there is no GST. Then services of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary services, including transportation of the deceased. Now this transaction is considered to be neither supply of goods nor supply of services, so there is no question of GST. And any transaction which is in the nature of actionable claims. So we saw in the definition of goods that goods are considered to be actionable claims, meaning actionable claims are part of goods and there is an element of GST liability on it. Now in Schedule 3, they say that yes, actionable claims we acknowledge are goods, but actionable claims other than lottery, betting and gambling are not supplies, which means I have a debtor. The debtor is converted to a bill of exchange. It is an actionable claim. That bill of exchange I discount. There is no element of GST because it is an actionable claim other than lottery, gambling, betting. But if it is an actionable claim in the nature of lottery, gambling and betting, there is GST. As I said, lottery in 2 states in India, gambling, Goa, Pondicherry we have, betting, all the states where we have race courses, we have betting. All these 3, the tickets that we procure are actionable claims. There is an element of GST. There is a taxability under GST. But other than these 3, all the other actionable claims are not treated as supply of goods, not treated as supply of service, hence away from the purview of GST. Now, any sale of land or sale of building, like we saw earlier, where the entire consideration is received after completion, is neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. So there is no element of GST on those transactions. Remember the 40 apartments, they will come under this category. 60 apartments will go under the category under Schedule 2, will be fully taxable. The remaining 40 apartments will come under this category. There is no need to pay GST. And then look at a simple situation. We have unique transactions also part of Schedule 3. Hence, I wanted to take up this scenarios. Now, R Limited is in Chennai. They are importing oil from Thailand. These goods are warehoused under customs. As we all know, when we are receiving goods from outside India, first they will reach the customs area. Then we have to do the customs formalities, filing of a bill of entry, payment of tax, then get a delivery order and remove the goods. But what happens is the goods have come and reached a warehouse in customs. But R Limited now gets a buyer in Kolkata. So R Limited is not inclined to take delivery of the goods from customs. Instead, he is directly selling it to the buyer in Kolkata. Now, can he sell it? 100% yes. Sale of Goods Act allows it. Sale of Goods Act talks about two types of delivery. One is, or two types of sales. One is by physical delivery, or the other one is transfer of goods by way of document of title to goods. I can transfer the ownership by giving you the goods, or I can transfer the ownership by way of transferring the title of the goods by transferring the documents which give me the title. I give it to you, it becomes yours. So he has done it. Now, the person in Chennai, R Limited, has made a sale to the person in Kolkata, in India. He has made a sale. Now, this sales, do you think it is taxable under GST? What is your answer? Yes, no. Person in Chennai has made a sale to a person in Kolkata. Do you think it is taxable under GST? Yes, no. Okay. Though all your answers are yes, I have to unfortunately disappoint you. The answer is no. It is not a supply. So why it is not a supply? Simple. When the goods have not crossed the customs frontier of India. What is customs frontier? Clearance from customs. See, geographically they are in India, but they have not become Indian goods. When will they become Indian goods? When the appropriate customs duties have been paid, and then when they are taken possession, that is when they are considered to be Indian goods. Till the time it has not suffered the customs duty, it is not considered to be Indian goods, and any transaction on those goods is not considered to be a supply at all in the eyes of GST. This is a huge amendment which came from 1st of February 2019, and we call this transaction as ex-bond sale. Why bond? Bond means the warehouse, no, customs warehouse. That warehouse is called as bonded warehouse. So from that customs bonded warehouse, the goods have been sold where there is no entry into India, not in literal terms, entry into India in legal terms. It has not crossed the customs frontier. So even before that the sale happens, it is not a supply under GST. It will not attract GST. Entry number 8A in Schedule 3 covers it, which says supply of warehoused goods to any person before clearance for home consumption is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. Okay. Now we'll go to the next part. V Limited is in Bengaluru and has placed an order with their supplier in Indonesia for supply of steel. Before the goods reached the Indian customs, it was sold to K Limited, Kanpur, by the way of transfer of document of title to goods. Now here again, we have a situation where there is a transfer by transfer of title to goods. But the difference between the previous situation and this situation is, previous situation, the goods have come to India. This situation, the goods have not even come to India. It is still sailing. Now, what is the taxability? Is there an applicability of GST? Yes, no. What is your view? Again, you can resort to the chat box and give me your answers, yes or no. Okay, so here again, the answer is no. There is no GST. Why? Because here also the goods have not crossed the customs frontier. They are still yet to enter India. Earlier situation, at least geographically they entered into India, but legally they have not crossed. In this case, neither geographical nor legal it has come into India. Hence, any supply of this nature will never be considered as taxable under GST. It is not a supply. This is the transaction which we call as high seas sale. So this is what is called high seas sale. It is not covered under GST. 8B, entry number 8B of Schedule 3 takes away the taxability of these transactions. And the next one, I think you would have now got tuned to the list of case study that I am giving. So now you see A Limited is in Hyderabad, has got its customer in Dubai, SAA Limited, and supplier is in Malaysia, which is P Limited. I have my customer in Dubai, my supplier is in Malaysia. Now A Limited is placing an order with his supplier in Malaysia, P Limited, asking them to directly supply the goods, billed to me in India, but shipped to SAA Limited in Gulf, Dubai. So what I am telling them is, bill to me, ship to Dubai. And I will raise an invoice on the Dubai person, SAA Limited, and tell them, sir, please, this is my invoice, goods will come on this day, please take it. Now question, is it taxable under GST? Yes, no. This is not taxable under GST because this is a transaction which is called as merchant trade transaction. A person sitting in India, without the goods entering into India, without the goods leaving out of India, he has done one import and export transaction. It is not an import or export in the eyes of GST. It is only an import and export from the eyes of accounting. When we are doing an accounting, we can call it as import and export. But in the eyes of GST, it is neither an import nor an export. Hence, it is considered to be a transaction which is not coming under GST. Again, brought in by way of entry number 7 into Schedule 3, neither supply of goods nor supply of service. Merchant trade transaction. The goods have not come into India, so it is not import. The goods have not left India, so there is no export under GST. But you may call it as import and export for accounting purpose. For GST purpose, it has got nothing to do with GST. There is no element of GST. Now, the other forceful such entry that they have brought in Schedule 3 is alcoholic liquor license. We know that alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not part of GST. Why? For the sheer reason we will see tomorrow in terms of levy, that alcoholic liquor for human consumption is excluded from the levy. It is a goods, but it is excluded from the levy of GST. So alcoholic liquor for human consumption, as a goods, it is not taxable under GST. But for manufacturing that, I am getting a license from the government. For a brand of that alcoholic liquor license, I am getting the license, paying a license fee from the government. Am I liable to pay GST on that license fee? This was a question which was hanging, which the GST Council decided, and they gave a retrospective amendment saying any money paid to get a license from the government for selling alcoholic liquor or doing the branding of alcoholic liquor is considered to be neither supply of goods nor supply of service. There is no element of GST. And these are the transactions which are under Schedule 3, which are neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. So quickly to recap, we saw the definition of supply, which is the taxable event under GST. 7(1)(a) talks about the general definition. Then we saw the import of services definition. Then we saw the transactions which will be deemed to be a supply under Schedule 1. Then we saw the tiebreaker, Schedule 2, to determine which are all considered to be supply of goods and which are all considered to be supply of service. Then we saw Schedule 3, which spoke about transactions which will be neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of service, which meant that these will never attract GST. They will never even come within the purview of GST. They are called no supply. Schedule 3 are called no supply. Okay. Now let's move to the next part of our discussion. The good news that I can give to you is we will have another 10 to 15 minutes only maximum to cover the remaining parts. So if in case you are getting tired and little bored, energize yourself, not more than 10 to 15 minutes. Composite supply. The terms, there are two terms which are unique to the supply definition in GST, which is talking about the definition of composite supply and definition of mixed supply. Now, what is a composite supply? Per definition, it means a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient consisting of 2 or more taxable supplies. When I am giving it to you, there are 2 or more taxable supplies. Taxable supplies of what I am giving could be either goods, services, both, any combination, and which are naturally bundled. That is the key term, which are naturally bundled, and it is supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business. Which are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business. And one of it has to be a principal supply. So breaking it down, there has to be 2 or more supplies, 2 or more taxable supplies. That should happen. Is it enough? No. There has to be a natural bundling. It should not be unnatural. There has to be a natural bundling, and they should be supplied in conjunction with each other in that type of business, where one of the supply will be a principal supply. One will be considered to be a major supply. That how to determine? Is it based upon value? No. There is no such thing called based upon value, but it will be determined based upon what is the utility. Now let us take a simple example. In a hotel where we book a stay, they say breakfast is included. Now the supply of goods, there is a supply of service. Then we will ask this question. In this case, there is a supply of service, there is a supply of service. Combination of two. Staying in the hotel is renting, and they are giving me food. There is a supply of service. Now these two services are combined. Which you think is principal? Is it stay or is it food? Obviously, stay is principal. That is how naturally we'll have to determine. And giving stay and food is natural. And that is how in that business it is done. We have different plans in respect of hotels called as continental plan. And we have American plan. American plan means they will give 2 meals. Continental plan means they will give only the breakfast. American plan means they will give you 2 meals along with the hotel stay. Now these are normal in the type of business. Then it is considered to be a composite supply. Now let me put forth one more example, because we should also know how the department is thinking in certain situations. I am buying an inverter and a battery. For what purpose? Obviously we know whenever there is a power cut, the battery through the inverter will help me sustain the requirements of my power needs. Inverter, battery, both are being purchased by me together. Now please tell me, which is principal, inverter or battery? There cannot be both. There has to be one principal supply. So as many of you have given the answer, it is inverter. True. I was also all along thinking that inverter is primary supply. In one of the advanced rulings given in West Bengal, department has said that the battery is the principal supply. Why they said battery, I will tell you a little later. But for now, it is some food for your thought. What we think is principal generally need not be thought the same way by the department as well, is what I want to leave as a thought. Now let's go to the next step. What is a mixed supply? Mixed supply means 2 or more individual supplies. 2 or more individual supplies that are given. Now what is the difference between a composite supply and a mixed supply? In composite supply, we saw the words that 2 or more taxable supplies. Whereas in mixed supply, it is restricted to 2 or more individual supplies of any goods or services or any combination thereof. But it should be for a single price, and it should not be a composite supply. So there is an exclusion. Mixed supply cannot be a composite supply. It should be for a single price, and it should be 2 or more individual supplies given together. 3 elements are required. 2 or more individual supplies given together. It should not be a composite supply, and it should be for a single price. Then only it is considered to be a mixed supply. Let us look at a situation. Happy Hotel Limited, a 5-star hotel in Coimbatore, has come up with an offer, the 1,500 rupees buffet dinner with unlimited liquor, unlimited food, unlimited liquor. Now, what is your view? Is this 1,500 taxable under GST? Is this 1,500 taxable under GST? Yes, no. What is your view? Is it 1,500 fully taxable under GST? Answer is yes. Sir, but liquor is also there. How can we tax liquor in GST? That is why you should read the definition closely. The definition says that it is 2 or more individual supplies. So if I am not ready to split and show what is the value, the full value will become taxable under GST because you are selling it for a single price. So GST will operate this transaction as a mixed supply. So what is a composite supply vis-a-vis what is a mixed supply? First, we have to be conversant with these definitions because there is a taxable element behind this. The taxable element is that a composite supply where the taxability of a composite supply is determined by the rate at which the principal supply is taxable. The taxability of a composite supply transaction, the taxability is determined by the rate at which the principal supply is taxable. Now, we saw the example of inverter and battery. We agree that it is a composite supply because it is naturally bundled. What good is an inverter without a battery? What good is a battery without an inverter? So both have to work together. So I am buying it naturally bundled. And in that business, it is natural to give it together. But here, the reason why department wanted to assume that battery is principal because battery is taxable at 28%, whereas inverter is taxable at 18%. So in this transaction, let's say 15,000 rupees is what is charged in total. For the 15,000, if you treat inverter as the principal supply, you will charge 18% GST. If you treat the battery as the principal supply, you will charge 28% GST. So department said, I agree that it is composite supply and the principal supply is battery. So 28% GST. So that is how we are seeing many things evolving in GST. That is because of the taxability of a composite supply transaction. On the other hand, when it comes to a mixed supply, it is quite heavy. In case of a mixed supply transaction, in that supply, whichever is the supply which is attracting the highest tax rate, that is the rate that will be applied on a mixed supply transaction. So if I am making a mixed supply transaction, let's say I'm giving a combo, popcorn, and then a Coke or a Pepsi, and then a chocolate, and then a sandwich. Out of these, which is attracting the highest rate of tax? The Coke or Pepsi is attracting the highest rate of tax. You are giving all this together for 500 rupees. The tax rate applicable on that 500 rupees will be the highest rate of tax, which is applicable on that Coke or Pepsi, the soft drink, the carbonated drink. That rate will apply on everything because that is the mixed supplies taxability under Section 8 of the CGST Act. So how to tax mixed supply, how to tax composite supply? The rules emerge from Section 8. Now we know what is a taxable supply, what is a composite supply, and what is a mixed supply. One more question we should have, or one clarity that we should always possess, is that not every transaction is classifiable or should be classified as mixed or composite supply, because there is a possibility that something can lie in between. It is neither mixed nor composite. Is it possible? 100% possible. I go to a supermarket, I buy some vegetables, I buy some biscuits, I then buy some shampoo, and then soft drinks. All this will be in my bill. Is it a mixed supply? No, because he is not giving it for a single price. He is charging me individually. Is it a composite supply? Certainly not. Nothing is naturally bundled. So it is neither composite supply, it is neither mixed supply. Yes, these transactions do exist. So there is no need to fit everything within this framework of mixed and composite. There can be transactions which are neither mixed nor composite, which will be taxed individually. We can call them as individual supplies. Now moving ahead with respect to exemptions. Now what is exemption under GST? There is a clear difference between not taxable and exempted. What is not taxable and what is exempted? I'll give a practical meaning which I think has professors and lecturers in college, you will appreciate better. A person is a student in a college, he doesn't have adequate attendance. Generally, we get condemnation. 75% is the attendance. When I studied, that was the limit. If we do not reach the 75% attendance limit, then you will have to apply for condemnation, where the HOD is, you are good with the HOD will give you the condemnation. Now, can I give a condemnation as an HOD? Yes. But can I give condemnation to a person who is studying in my college, or can I give condemnation to a person who is not even studying in my college? That is the distinction. If I have to give condemnation, which is exemption, only to those people who are studying in my college, which means if I have to give exemption, first it must be taxable. Only when something is taxable under GST, I can give exemption. Existence of exemption is a proof that it is taxable. Only when it is taxable, I can give exemption. This is one part. What is not taxable then? He is not even a student of this college. Then how can I give him exemption? So it is called not taxable. So that is the demarcation between not taxable and exempted. In GST, section 11 of the CGST Act and the corresponding section in IGST section 6, they have the power to give this exemption, and those powers have been granted to the CBIC, where when this GST Council gives them the go-ahead, they can issue a notification and give the exemption. So it could be exemption in terms of goods, exemption in terms of services. And generally, how the exemptions will be is, exemptions can be wholly exempted, fully exempted, not even a single rupee needs to be paid, or sometimes it can be partially exempted. There are notifications in GST which says anything above 5% is exempted, which means up to 5% is taxable. So it is a partial exemption. And then exemption can be conditional exemption. Only when you satisfy this, then only it is exempted. And in some cases, exemptions can be unconditional as well. So these are the general nature in which we will see exemptions under GST. There are specific notifications for exemptions in case of goods and exemption in case of services. Notification 2/2017 in case of goods, and notification 12/2017 in case of services. So these are the notifications which contain the exhaustive list of exempted goods and exempted services. Now to the last bit of our discussion. We have tried seeing the different types of supplies. Now let's give a thought about what you see on your screen, so that tomorrow we can catch up from here the aspect of levy, which is also to be handled by me tomorrow. So look at the concept of what is a different types of supplies which are used, the terms which are used in the GST law. Taxable supply, zero rated supply, exempted supply, non taxable supply, nil rated supply, and then non-GST supply. Now, what are these? What is taxable supply? Is the one which is covered under the levy, is what is called as taxable supply. Exempted supply, it is covered under the levy, that is why it is taxable, but it has been exempted by a notification. Exercising the powers under section 11 of the CGST Act, or section 5 of the section 6 of the IGST Act. So under that, it has been given an exemption. That is what is called as exempted supply. Not taxable supply, something which is not even covered under GST. Non-GST supply, it is goods or service, but specifically excluded by Schedule 3. Those are considered to be non-GST supply. What is nil rated? Nil rated are the ones which are taxable, but the rate of tax is nil. Do we have any such thing in the GST law? As of now, there are not any goods or services which are called as nil rated. And in GST, whether you call yourself as a nil rated, exempted, or not taxable, you have given a common word called as exempted supply. Now, what is zero rated supply? That is what I will reserve for tomorrow's discussion. We will start our discussion from zero rated supply tomorrow and go and see the length and breadth of the levy and the other provisions of GST which are allotted to me. So what I'll now do is thank you all for your patient hearing. Any questions that you may have, please feel free to ask the question in whichever mode that is possible, either unmuting yourself or by typing your questions in the chat box. So thank you again for being patient, audience. Sorry, I'm not able to, now I found this button to stop sharing. I've done that. Yes, any questions from your side, please go ahead.
Any questions you may put in the chat box if it is there. I think, sir, I think we can wait for 1 minute, I think, because
Sure, sir.
so there is a one question, no?
Yes, sir.
please tell
Could you
what
please
is-
tell what is nil rated supply?
Yes.
As I was telling you, what is nil rated supply is the concept of nil rated was used in the earlier regime of central excise, where we used to go by the tariff. Every HSN, the harmonized system of nomenclature, that is how the goods and used to be classified. Against that, the rate of duty will be mentioned. Some of the HSNs, against that, the rate of duty will not be mentioned. It will be mentioned as nil. Hence, they were called as nil rated. In GST, they are called as exempted. So there is no concept of nil rated in GST. But maybe in the future, they might purposefully bring it. That is why they have kept this words in the act. So what is nil rated is against a particular good or a particular service, the rate of tax is mentioned as nil. They are considered as nil rated. But for all practical purposes of GST, exempted supply includes nil rated. So whenever we say exempted supply, we can assume very well that nil rated is also part of exempt supply, and the same treatment has to be given.
Oh, it is okay. I think it's clearly yes. So, right. Any more? I think please raise your queries if it is there. Jos, Jos is there?
Please, sir.
Jos, I believe, sir, Jos, I think you can give a lot of thanks to Sagmadan sir also. Okay, here, please.
Pardon? Sorry, sir.
If you are free, just come and give a vote of thanks also to sir. I think one thing, Jos, I think we should very specifically thank him. He is a saver today. I think because
Yes, yes.
I think that is the best prize which the participants received. I think the best way. I think he was teaching like everyone like a school school students. I think exactly very simple way. So one more question. I think one more question.
Yeah, if their exchange of gold for another, but if there is a making charge added, would that have GST? Certainly, yes. There are two transactions. Let's say I'm giving 10 grams of gold and you are giving me 10 grams worth of jewelry. Now, the 10 grams worth of jewelry that you are giving, which will obviously include the making charges and your margins. On that, you will charge me GST. But me giving you the 10 grams of gold, that will not become a supply because it is not in the course of furtherance of my business. That's it.
I think no more questions, sir.
No more questions. I think is
I think one more question. If there is import of goods,
Yeah.
how will it be taxed? The import of goods will be taxed under customs. For now is the answer I will give you. Tomorrow when we discuss levy, I will tell you how and why it can come under GST as well. So we can park that question for tomorrow.
I think if there is any further questions, I think they can go through what they have learned now. And still, Sanganar sir is coming tomorrow also. They can ask raise the question tomorrow also, I feel. May I close here, Jose, I think we can close it. I think.
Okay, so today, our dearest friend of Ernakulam branch, C. Shankaranaran sir, other dignitaries and participants. Today we started our program, the faculty development program for MG University. And our first speaker, as our Roy sir said, he is a savior. Shankaranaran sir is a good friend of us, a good friend of our branch. And whenever there is a help required, definitely will be there. And I must say today we started with a, it's like a cricket match. The opener bats well. And today we got a yes, wonderful opening batsman, Shankaranaran sir. And it was really very informative and regarding the basic that supply that is lies in the coming days. It's if we understand the basic, the supply regarding the supply, then if we don't understand that properly, then the entire GST will be in a big trouble. So today our faculty was so very much explained, or it was very wonderful class, or rather I say seminar to our other faculty, the persons who are attending are faculty members of MG University. But our Shankaranaran sir was explaining, I think definitely it will be helpful and helpful for their knowledge enhancement as well as the way they can teach their students. So thank you, Shankaranaran sir, for that wonderful presentation of today. And of course, we are waiting for tomorrow also. Again, sir is coming. So thank you very much on behalf of Ernakulam branch and all the faculty members of MG University. I extend a sincere gratitude to you. And I also thank, yes.
One thing I think which I want to add is that around nearly 280 plus 300 registered participants are there, I think, but some of them couldn't join. I don't know why it is. I think if there is any technical problem, they can contact the branch office, or even we had a WhatsApp group last year also. The same WhatsApp group, the information was sent from the branch to each and every registered participants. They can join that WhatsApp group and raise their concerns if there is one, and we are ready to support you, because as mentioned by Joseph, I think this session, all the 6 days, if you participate, I think definitely you can become more or less an expert in GST.
Yes, they can become like a Shankaranaran sir. Maybe they can in the class. So because we all chartered accountants are very love to hear you, because that kind of explanation or narration about the GST, we know it's very complicated sometimes. We will feel it's very easy, but when we go to the each provisions, it's become very tough. So understanding the basics, especially in GST, is very much required. So thank you very much once again. And I also thank
Imrit madam is there. Imrit madam is there. I think GST, ICA, the GST Goods and Service and India Tax Committee Fund Secretary Imrit madam is there. I feel so. Madam, are you there?
I'm there.
Do you want to say a few words, madam?
Sure, sir. It's an honor to be a part of this program, and thanks a lot to each and everyone who not only participated but also has been the background behind this event, a backing hand for this event.
Thank you, madam. Thanks a lot. I think it was a great help. Even RK sir, even Atul sir will be coming in between all these days, and they will also be sharing their opinions and suggestions, or taking some sessions also, definitely. I think Raju, can you share that link here in this chat box to join that WhatsApp? Somebody was raising the question here.
Yes.
ഇതിൽ ഷെയർ ചെയ്ത് അവർക്ക് ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ഞാൻ വാട്സാപ്പിൽ കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ട്.
അവരുടെ മൊബൈൽ ഇട്ട് കൊടുക്കുക അല്ലേ?
മൊബൈലിൽ കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. സെയിം ലിങ്ക് തന്നെ, നാളെയും സെയിം ലിങ്ക് തന്നെയാണ്. മീറ്റിംഗ് നാളെയും സെയിം ലിങ്ക് തന്നെയാണ്.
Yes. The same link through you can join this WebEx through the same link which you have joined today also. So there is no different link is there, and the WhatsApp, that link also I think Raju has already shared with you. I think through that link you join that WhatsApp group. Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, sir, and I also thank all the participants for their live interaction with our speaker faculty, and see you all tomorrow at 3 p.m. with another session by our eminent faculty Shankaranarayan sir. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankaranarayan sir, from bottom of heart once again. I think all the participants.
Anytime.
We missed Ranjit today. I think chairman today. I think definitely he will be joining.
Tomorrow he will be there. He is traveling. That's why he had a very important meeting at Calicut. So early morning he left, and he will be reaching late evening today. So that's why he could not join. But
it was wonderful and addressed by Sabu sir. Sabu sir is still there. I think Soman sir is here, and all are here. I think big thanks to all. I think for all the support.